Soon I will come to the new world and destroy it all! Excuse me, I thought the Monster Guild's Research Commission agreed that I was the Black Dragon given that assignment? Greetings, lesser beings. Oh god, no, who invited him? I know it wasn't me. I wish to devour this new world. Shut up, Dire Miralis! Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages in the world of Monster Hunter, the Monster Hunter world, we have limited time left before the next big update. And while some of you may know exactly what is to come, I personally try to stay blind for the Pro and Noob series, and therefore occasionally my information has a little bit of a blip in it. I know that there is a Black Dragon coming to the new world at some point, and before we even get into this, I want to say regardless of any of these results based off of the old world versions of them, a new world version of any single one of these has the potential to be the best creature in the game.
You know I love all my demons equally.
No matter which of these monsters wins today, I would be absolutely pumped to see any one of them come. That said, I know it is one of Fatalis, Alatreon, or Dire Miralis, so let's look at them from an individual value standpoint. In essence, let's find a way to break down who might just be the best of these three monsters. Not because I think that will be the one that's most likely to come, but simply because one of them does actually have to be better than the other two. Well, regardless of best, I am first, which means that I was at least the best at some point in time. What are you even saying, old man? Who cares who is best? I will destroy you, puny pink man. I, wasn't expecting to be talked to directly here. Ecology. Fatalis sort of gets the short end of the stick here simply because we are looking at basic Fatalis rather than his cousin Crimson Fatalis or his Papa White Fatalis, who are both more powerful and have slightly more expansive backgrounds that add on to the Fatalis base. And as a specific point, I am not attributing the destruction of Castle Strayed to base Fatalis, so as big a point as this is in his background, it will not count in his favor here. Fatalis melts the armor of the hunters he kills onto his body to make his scales extremely durable, and he has nearly uncomparable control of the fire element itself, even surpassing Teostra and Lunastra on occasion.
Excuse me?
And his armor is a big sticking point in the Monster Hunter lore, with stories existing of hunters who wear this armor disappearing without a trace or just dying mysteriously out of nowhere. Some believe that this equipment is alive, and a long-lost piece of Fatalis that was turned into a large black blade was mined in the Pocky village and found to regenerate a few days later. The blade was regenerating. This led the guild to fear that any given part of the Fatalis is at least capable of regenerating. Alatreon, however, while not having a massive amount known about him, has some very cool things worth noting. They tend to live in nearly hospitable locations, places like the inside of volcanoes or deep down at the bottom of the ocean, or some, like the one in the Sacred Land, which by its mere existence made the area inhospitable for other life, causing constant and severe weather changes that mean even plant life can't exist too closely to an Alatreon. Not much is known about why this monster can control 4 of the elements, but a lot can be said for how ridiculously powerful something would have to be able to do that in the first place. And not just slightly either, he has very impressive control of each of the 4 elements that he has. That said, these are all, simply put, the most powerful creatures in all of Monster Hunter. So that is sort of something that he has on par with everyone else to that extent. They're all super, super powerful because of the unnatural appearance of his various abilities and the way his horns look and the chaos that follows him. Many legends say that Alatreon is actually some sort of god or demon transformed into an elder dragon. And honestly, while there is nothing to prove this in any way, shape, or form, there is also so little information about him in general that no one can really say that in the Monster Hunter universe, this isn't true. So who knows, I guess. As for Dire Miralis, this is where it gets really spicy.
Medium spicy!
Dire Miralis is known for, basically, being a scary-ass bitch. So far, Dire Miralis has only existed in the Tainted Sea, which I assume isn't what the body of water was always called, as these days it is full of deep crimson waves, presumably caused by the sheer existence of a Dire Miralis in the area in ancient times, whose body heat destroyed all life in the Tainted Sea. Dire Miralis has, in theory, a ridiculous regenerative ability to come come back from pretty much nothing, to the point that incredibly long after it dies, its heart will continue to beat, and it is said that a dire Miralis is capable of regenerating entirely from its heart alone, with some legends suggesting that dire Miralis is instead just completely immortal, and that there has only ever been one. These legends have some overlap with something super cool as well, which is Crimson Fatalis.
The Crimson Cockatoo!
See, it's hard to talk about dire Miralis' ecology without making a big point of his aesthetic design as well, as they are inherently linked to each other at this point at least, as dire Miralis has an almost identical body shape to Fatalis, except that he appears to be nearly made of volcanic rock, dripping with magma, and this is no mistake, at least not according to some potential theories and legends. Before dire Miralis was in a Monster Hunter game, we had Crimson Fatalis, and some legends about him directly refer to a particularly powerful incarnation of Crimson Fatalis, making this creature either a specific variant or even potentially a deviant if it is a single member of the species, who lives inside deep craters of active volcanoes, known as quote-unquote the most evil elder dragon. The description given of this creature is strikingly similar to dire Miralis: large wings, pointy shoulders, lava-like markings, and a glowing chest. This legend also says this creature has untold regenerative powers and a ridiculously hard shell, able to send monsters running with a single flap of its wings, which, if we are talking about dire Miralis, would be a single volley of magma meteors, which, yeah, would probably send a bunch of monsters running. So I'm saying that there is lore that exists that supports the possibility that dire Miralis is actually a particularly powerful version of Crimson Fatalis, which, if true, would make him also have the Fatalis lore attributed to him. So really, as a whole, if for no other reason than how interesting I consider this specific theory, I'm going to give this category to dire Miralis.
I am victorious. I thought you didn't even care about the competition. I don't care about anything. Funness.
Okay, so hear me out. I have never personally fought dire Miralis, so I sort of have to go on the opinions of others for this one, and I have never necessarily heard anyone say that his fight is one of the best fights or one of the worst fights in the game. So I'm going to treat it here as being about neutral for the creature that he is, about what you could expect from the creature that exists in front of you. Fatalis, on the other hand, I'm sorry buddy, maybe it's because you were the original one and therefore the most plain, but you just have such a boring fight. Basically based around you having a godly health pool and dealing massive damage by lightly touching people while you do some pretty normal fire breaths and fireballs, with some very slightly more interesting moves throughout. It's just very, very basic dragon, and even Fatalis, who is based off of the classic fantasy dragon, has so much more potential in terms of in-game power level than the basic dragon that he actually shows up as in the game.
You're so evil it's boring! You're basic, man!
And then there's Alatreon. Oh, Alatreon, who I think benefits more in this category than any other category from having 4 of the 5 elements, as in my opinion, this fight is incredibly fun to take part in. The different stances, flying and ground, changing which element he uses, and then also the fact that every element has its own unique moveset. Honestly, the only real thing missing here from him are moves that mix the elements together, which he should totally be capable of doing, in my opinion. That said, Alatreon wins this one for me. Unfortunately, my opinion is limited on dire Miralis, but I am certain that Fatalis is in last for me in this category, so that leaves Miralis right in the middle with Alatreon in first.
Soon I will go to my new home. Not if I destroy it first. Nobody hurts my new island. Design.
Fatalis is just about as classic a monster as you could really get. The basic archetype of the fantasy dragon: long, serpent-like, coiling, slender body, pointed features, fiery attacks, and all of that. And honestly, it's really good. For what they were aiming for, Fatalis is great, but I just think that he does visually have a ceiling, as he is based on something quite simple. That said, there are a couple little details that don't really shine through in-game that would really bump him up a notch if you could visually see them. His eyes. They're not normal eyes, no. They're made of crystals.
Crystals?
Which is actually pretty neat. Alatreon is fantastic to me. I am a massive fan of his general aesthetic, even the big thick horns he has protruding from his forehead. Yeah, I really like those, especially under the guise that they assist his elemental control, so they're very cool. Then, well, there's Dire Miralis, who is the same general shape as Fatalis, the classic fantasy dragon shape, but then just absolutely covered in volcanic rock from head to toe, with his wings adapted almost to be used as cannons to fire little meteors of lava down from above whenever he feels like it. Look, I'm sorry if you disagree, but Dire Miralis wins this one head and shoulders above Alatreon, who is again another step above Fatalis. Sorry, buddy, but Dire Miralis visually is basically you, but made of super hot rock, so you sort of suck in comparison, Fatalis.
That was extremely rude, but very true, soft one. Please don't start calling everything soft that isn't quite as hard as you. Theme music.
This is a new category today, as the old coolness factor is now lumped into the design section, and these are all absolute beauties of monster themes, all living up to the power of what a Black Dragon's music needs to sound like. Fatalis has a mixed orchestral theme with a choir, nice and powerful, tense, and heroic. It really gives the feeling they want you to have here, of fighting a genuinely powerful dragon. It's really well done, but in my opinion, not quite as good as Alatreon's. His is much more mysterious, doesn't have a choir, but it's much more almost evil sounding as far as I'm concerned. And it has these breaks that sound almost like someone put Phantom of the Opera in my Monster Hunter, and I don't really have a problem with that, especially for a monster like Alatreon. It's just so fitting for him to have this intense style of music with an almost horror type of feel to it. It's great, but again, not quite as great as Dire Miralis, who I think may have one of the best themes in the entire series in all of Monster Hunter. From the very beginning, it pulls you in. It tells you that this creature is not to be trifled with by any means, one of the most purely destructive beings that you have ever faced, and it simply builds and builds into this rising crescendo of tension that releases into the epic main theme. It's fantastic, and it feels to me like the type of thing that you would genuinely attribute to one of the most lore terrifying creatures in existence, one of the things most capable of wiping out life as we know it. This theme fits perfectly, and it wins this category hands down for me as well.
My winning of this category represents how I will leave the new world. Utter destruction.
That didn't even make sense grammatically.
Well, what makes you the expert on grammar? Your theme didn't even have words in it. Death fight?
And this is where we get into the meat of the matter. Let me start this off by saying a fight between any of these creatures and another one of any of these creatures would likely result in unprecedented loss of life in the Monster Hunter universe. Like a full-on fight where both creatures use their full power in a fight to the death. It would easily wipe out a whole continent of people without any sort of struggle. But between all three of them, a fight to the death between these three creatures with only one being allowed to live at the end, that could bring upon us the end of the planet as a whole. The end of life as we know it.
Oh, that's intense.
And as you may have guessed, there are a few unique interactions going on here that could change which of these three creatures come out on top in this fight to be the king upon a throne of nothingness. Alatreon, from the beginning, has a distinct advantage in that he has access to the ice element, which is strong against Dire Miralis, at least in his armored mode. However, in order to use this, Alatreon would have to fly into the air, which makes him weak to fire, which both other monsters use in heaps. Fatalis, oddly enough, is also weak to fire, at least compared to the other elements, and therefore the monster with the greatest elemental advantage here is Dire Miralis, especially as he basically removes the flight capabilities of the other two monsters by causing meteor storms that are easier to dodge on the ground than they are in the air. He really brings the fight to his ground rather than going to where they want to fight. He makes them fight him where he wants to go. Defensively speaking, there is no record or even legend of Alatreon having significant regenerative powers or being potentially immortal in some way, shape, or form, which means that he is the least durable of these three creatures, at least as far as the rumors go. Fatalis is known to be alive, even from a single scale, though the only regeneration of a Fatalis that we have witnessed is the black blade restoring to its former shape as a sword, which is interesting, but it was a sword returning to its shape as a sword after being mined from the shape of a sword. It doesn't really quite lead us to believe that a Fatalis would regenerate back into a living being like this. Dire Miralis, however, does also have a legendarily hard exterior.
Is that a euphemism?
His heart consistently beats for years and years and years after his death, which is a clear sign that some part of him is definitely still alive in some capacity. Given this information, Miralis is either even to or slightly better than Fatalis in defense, and is the strongest in offense, making Miralis once again the clear winner of this category.
I am prepared to devour all of creation. Seriously? You're letting him go? This is the saddest day of my life, and I've lived a while.
So that leads us to our conclusion, and for those who are following along, today's winner is head and shoulders above the rest of the crowd, Miralis. I know, coming from me, of all people, who has never actually fought him in-game myself, and honestly, I had no idea how much I even liked Miralis until today. I've learned a lot about him through this process, and it's made me really, really respect him as a creature. And while I think he definitely wouldn't be the best black dragon to bring to the new world first, I do think that he is the best black dragon, at least out of these three options. Alright everyone, I've been Contender, and this has been a three-way showdown between Fatalis, Alatreon, and Miralis for my love. All of them win in some capacity, but Miralis burns the brightest. Do you agree with where I landed in each individual category? Which of these monsters do you think is flat out the best regardless? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, when we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Continent, Hollow, we're all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and we'll cheer. Some of you are patrons, even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros, there's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.